The Cult of the Shareholder: How Capitalism Rewired the Human Mind. A radiography of capitalism, what's really inside it.
The invisible creed of capitalism. Imagine a society where every institution, from newsrooms to classrooms, whispers the same quiet command: maximize shareholder value. Not as a suggestion, not as a debate, but as sacred doctrine. That modern capitalism's invisible creed of belief so entrenched that to question it feels almost unthinkable, even immoral. We are told corporations exist for one purpose only: to enrich their shareholders. Everything else, workers' well-being, environmental survival, community stability, must be secondary, incidental, optional. But how did this idea, born in corporate think tanks and elite universities, become our societal gospel? How did a mere economic rule metastasize into a moral law, framing greed as duty and empathy as inefficiency? Let's dig in. Question for reflection: if the free market rewards only those who serve shareholders, who rewards those who serve society?
If free market rewards only those who serve shareholders, who rewards those who serve society?
The birth of an idea, from Adam Smith to Milton Friedman, in the late 18th century. Adam Smith penned The Wealth of Nations, often cited as capitalism's founding text. Ironically, Smith also wrote about moral sentiments, the empathy that binds societies together. But those warnings vanished from capitalist orthodoxy. What survived was the mechanistic part: self-interest as the engine of progress. Fast forward to 1970. The New York Times published an essay by economist Milton Friedman that declared the corporate executive's sole responsibility is to increase profits for shareholders. It was a bullet point, not a philosophy, but it spread like wildfire. Business schools canonized it. Politicians legislated it. Journalists normalized it. In less than 2 generations, Friedman's line became corporate scripture. The shareholder-first dogma was not merely a theory, it was indoctrination, carefully marketed through prestige and repetition. Corporations began to act as abstract financial vessels, not social institutions. A company could outsource labor, exploit loopholes, and devastate communities, all rational acts in service of the shareholder god. If every institution, from our schools to our media, teaches us to think like shareholders, when do we ever learn to think like citizens? Question for reflection.
Can a society survive when its greatest moral justification for action is because it makes money?
Education as indoctrination. Let's walk into a business school classroom. On the wall hangs a quote about competition being the lifeblood of progress. Students memorize models showing corporate choices as mechanical functions: cost, risk, reward. The social disappears. Ethics are footnotes. Young minds, eager to succeed, absorb not just knowledge but ideology. They learn to treat profit not as one metric of success but the only one that matters. Textbooks present this not as dogma but as reality. This is how capitalism reproduces itself, not through force but through curriculum. The academic-industrial complex manufactures belief. Case studies heroize executives who cut jobs to increase efficiency. Professors frame compassion as bias, and shareholder primacy as economic truth. In time, students graduate fluent in the language of justification. They become policymakers, journalists, financial analysts, all spreading the same script: the market decides. How much of what you believe about success and freedom is truly your belief, and how much was programmed by systems designed to profit from you? Question for reflection.
At what point does education become propaganda when it no longer invites moral imagination?
The media machine, corporate capitalism's megaphone. If education is the seedbed of ideology, the media is the megaphone. Through corporate news outlets, narratives are filtered to sustain belief in the benevolence of markets. Billionaire-owned and tightly controlled networks speak of job creators, not exploiters. Turn on the evening news and you'll see business reports glorifying stock performance as a measure of national success. The Dow rises and anchors smile. Never mind the layoffs that made that number possible. When corporations post record profits, that's good news, but for whom? Ownership concentration worsens the problem. In the US, a handful of conglomerates control most media outlets. Their boards overlap with corporations they report on. The watchdog has become the house pet. Even language itself becomes weaponized. Freedom is tied to market choice. Innovation becomes synonymous with deregulation. Growth translates to rising inequality. In this structure, the truth doesn't need to be censored, it's simply never produced. Why do we call it progress when it destroys the very communities and ecosystems that make life possible? Question for reflection.
Can citizens truly be free when their perception of freedom is scripted by corporate media?
Psychological warfare. The marketing of normalcy propaganda isn't just what you retold, it is what you come to believe without noticing. Tired of surviving and hard work, our minds are numb. It takes extra energy to think and connect the dots. They, stealthily designing our life structure this way. Advertising doesn't merely sell products. It sells the logic that buying is participation in society. Major brands wrap themselves in virtue while their supply chains exploit the vulnerable. The act of consumption becomes a sacrament of capitalism. Your purchase equals your belonging. Corporate marketing reinforces submission to this system by making rebellion feel foolish. The worker who questions inequality is labeled lazy. The activist is called radical. The whistleblower is anti-business. And so millions keep grinding, hoping one day to join the shareholder class that exploits them. Not being aware, the hope is baseless because they control the game entirely. Meanwhile, the absurd promise of upward mobility keeps hope alive, but statistically, the latter barely moves. 1% of the population controls nearly half of global wealth. The rest compete for diminishing scraps yet still feel guilty for not climbing higher. When corporations act with more rights than people, who is democracy really serving? Question for reflection.
If owning stocks defines freedom, what happens to those whose only stake is their labor?
Shareholder supremacy is secular religion. By now, the ideology functions exactly like a religion. Sacred text, Milton Friedman's essays, priests, CEOs, economists, and media pundits. Holy object, the quarterly earnings report. Heaven, an endlessly growing GDP, asterisk hell, regulation, labor unions, and taxes. Rituals about earnings calls. IPO celebrations, market opening bells, all designed to reaffirm faith in the invisible hand. Yet this hand does not lift all boats, it chokes those under water. The organized religions of any type and denominations are corrupted to the core, being deeply in their pockets, preaching to the people the big lie of blindly accepting this blasphemy against God, Jesus, and humanity. Money-soaked religion wants and accepts this ritualistic worship of the dollar and ultimate profit to be the almighty ruler over the capitalist land. The beauty of this system is its invisibility. No tyrant enforces it. People enforce it on themselves, believing any alternative is impossible. The tyranny is cultural, psychological, and moral, far stronger than political censorship. What would education look like if its purpose were enlightenment instead of employability? Question for reflection.
When profit becomes sacred, what room remains for conscience?
Real-world consequences, collateral damage of faith. Let's step outside theory. The corporate creed to enrich shareholders at any cost has gutted entire towns, and let's face it, the whole country. Factories close because outsourcing boosts returns. CEOs and corporate executives moved voluntarily the businesses out of this country. Nobody forced them to move. They were and are motivated by sick psychopathic greed. Yet, interestingly, all the blame is cast on the countries where they moved. They need to be hated and militarily punished. They bamboozled and paid the whole political arena, including the president, that they are just innocent victims here, and they need financial help in the form of bailouts and military help, so they can decimate the other country for extorting even more profit out of them. Climate pledges evaporate when oil stocks surge. Healthcare firms prioritize dividends over patients. Tech giants commodify attention while funding well-being campaigns to look ethical. Jobs with benefits disappeared under their creepy, sickening, despotic power. Governments, courted by corporate lobbying and revolving door careers, play handmaid to profit. Public policy is privatized. Citizens morph into consumers. Workers into human resources. Every relationship is reduced to a transaction. Even well-meaning executives, trapped inside this system, find rebellion impossible. A CEO who prioritizes social good over shareholder profits risks immediate firing. The structure punishes conscience and rewards ruthlessness. CEOs like God-blessed Dan Price are hated, marginalized, and demonized, just because they treat employees with respect, courtesy, correctness, and humanity. Values that are eradicated in this capitalist society. Can a world built on endless competition ever deliver collective peace?
Can capitalism reform itself when morality and profit are designed to be enemies?
Manufactured consent and the fear of alternatives. Capitalism's most successful trick is not convincing people it as good, but convincing them it as inevitable. Alternatives like democratic socialism or cooperative ownership are often dismissed as fantasies, hated and attacked, despite small-scale examples proving otherwise worldwide. Scandinavian models, worker-owned companies, and community investment funds all suggest more humane possibilities. Yet public discourse rarely entertains these seriously. Why? Because the gatekeepers of conversation, academia, media, politics are financially entangled with the very system under critique. The Overton window of acceptable debate is kept narrow. Meanwhile, capitalism's failures, poverty, inequality, ecological collapse are reframed as personal problems. You didn't fail because the system abandoned you. You failed because you didn't hustle enough, creating not just a financial catastrophe but also a serious, general, widespread mental stress over the working class. Disturbing cities, municipalities, and families who have to struggle more and more, year by year, to survive and feed the capitalist corporate endless greed. Are we participants in capitalism, or are we the product it sells? Question for reflection.
If human survival depends on endless growth, the planet cannot sustain it? What then?
Reclaiming the social contract, it's not enough to critique. We must reimagine. The first step to freedom is recognizing indoctrination. Once we see shareholder primacy for what it is, a consciously manufactured ideology, we can ask, who should corporations serve? The answer is simple yet revolutionary: everyone they affect. The notion of a stakeholder economy isn't utopian. It's pragmatic. Long-term prosperity requires functioning societies, stable ecosystems, and dignity in labor. A corporation that destroys its environment or impoverishes its workforce corrodes its own foundation. Reform begins with rethinking incentives. Tying executive pay to social impact, taxing speculation, empowering labor, enforcing antitrust laws, and democratizing corporate governance. Some nations are experimenting with public benefit corporations that prioritize purpose over profit. Ultimately, reclaiming the social contract means rewriting the narrative. Corporations are creations of society, not the other way around. What kind of future emerges when we start valuing human potential above shareholder profit? Question for reflection.
If we built this system through collective belief, can we not also build a new one through collective courage?
Awakening from the market dream, capitalism's triumph was never just economic, it was psychological. It convinced billions to equate profit with virtue, compliance with freedom, and inequality with efficiency. But myths lose power when named. Media that train us what to desire, schools that teach us what to accept, and doctrines that worship profit as destiny. The challenge now is not to destroy capitalism overnight, but to humanize what remains to make markets serve life, not the reverse. That requires moral imagination, civic pressure, and the courage to utter forbidden words. Shareholders are not gods. Our loyalty must return to the living workers, communities, and the planet itself. Because the true measure of a civilization isn't its stock index, it's its soul. What kind of future emerges when we start valuing human potential above shareholder profit?
When history looks back at our century, will it say we served the market or that we finally made the market serve us?
Food for thought. The hidden curriculum of capitalism. Every era creates its own religion, and ours worships the market. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The free market isn't free, it's meticulously constructed. The education system trains obedience to its rhythms, and the media normalizes its moral blind spots. What passes for objectivity too often disguises allegiance to profit. We are taught that corporations must prioritize shareholders over humanity, that efficiency outweighs empathy, and that growth justifies all soulless and inhumane actions. Yet growth itself has become pathological, consuming not only the planet, but the very ability to imagine alternatives. The brilliance of this system is its subtlety. It doesn't demand loyalty through violence, it earns it through aspiration. It convinces the exploited to identify with their exploiters, to believe that one day, if they play the game well enough, They'll join the elite few reaping the profits of others' labor. Even morality has been branded. Corporate social responsibility is marketed as benevolence, while wages stagnate and ecosystems collapse. A civilization that measures integrity and quarterly earnings cannot recognize the poverty of its own spirit. Consider this paradox. Capitalism depends on social trust, yet destroys the very foundations that generate it. Communities dissolve into consumers, dialogue turns into data, and creativity becomes another commodity to be mined. The indoctrination works not because people are blind, but because they are exhausted. The pace of survival leaves no room for philosophy. When survival becomes the primary occupation, there's no time to question systems only to serve them. Yet awareness is resistance. The moment we question the inevitability of shareholder primacy, we reclaim our agency. The moment we name indoctrination for what it is, a system designed to isolate individuals and monetize their consent, we begin to rebuild solidarity. True wealth has never been measured in dividends, but in dignity, time, community, and beauty. Question for reflection.
If morality cannot compete with profitability in this system, should we not redefine what success means?
Call to action. The time has come to stop waiting for morality from markets that were never built to be moral. Demand new laws that bind corporations to social responsibility. Support worker ownership, cooperative enterprises, and local economies. Refuse media that treat inequality as natural law. Above all, educate differently. Teach economic literacy not as obedience to systems, but as a language for liberation. Create art that unmasks propaganda, conversations that break the illusion, and networks that put people before profit. Because the future isn't owned by shareholders, it belongs to those who dare to imagine an economy with a soul.
Let's stop serving the system. Let's make the system serve humanity now!
I used to have job with benefits, affordable prices and housing. We used to have a good living.
Please tell me what you think and how you feel about this issue. Analyze it, brainstorm it, debate it, and if you like it, please share it. Thank you for watching. I truly and highly appreciate you, and God bless you.